After 6 years of trial and error, my veggie garden is finally kind of looking after itself. Today, I'm sharing 5 permaculture methods that have increased my harvest and reduced my workload in the veggie garden. And I also just want to show off my lovely summer garden because it's looking great. When I first started gardening and studying permaculture, I struggled to find an example of what a permaculture veggie garden actually looks like. Permaculture talks a lot about food forests and perennials, but I still wanted to grow my favourite annual veggies. I just wanted to do it without as much work. It's not so much for us. Constantly fighting pests, always shoveling mulch and compost in. What's finally made it all click into place for me? Thinking about it as a whole system and an ecosystem rather than just fixating on the end product and harvesting the veggies. That's all very well for you to say, Rose, but what does that actually mean? Okay, so we're going to talk about natural pest control through using flowers and insects, using the soil as your seed bank, plant layering, mulch, chop and drop, and there's a wicking bed update at the end, so stay tuned for that. It took a while for these things to actually click into place and start working for me, and now that I can see them in action, man, it's delightful. This is embarrassing, but when I first started veggie gardening, I thought that flowers were a waste of space. They're very pretty. I love flowers. I just wanted to grow veggies in my veggie garden. I had so many pest problems, as you can imagine. Turns out the flowers are now why my garden survives so much of my neglect. So the beneficial flowers attract beneficial insects, which then eat all the unbeneficial insects. So for instance, I've got calendula, which seems to attract the hornworms and caterpillars. They love the calendula flowers instead of my corn, which is great. And in my first couple of years, I planted all my broccolis and cauliflowers in one spot, and I had a massive infestation of aphids and whitefly. And now that I've embraced polyculture, which I'll get to later, and made sure to have enough flowers that bring lady beetles to the garden, there's enough lady beetles around to eat them. Sweet alyssum! The lady beetles love it. Clover! The bees love it, and it's a good nitrogen fixer. And whatever this thing's called, pyrethrum. It's as tall as me! Kind of. A lot of the beneficial flowers are self-seeding and coming up again themselves, so they've become established members of this ecosystem. Letting things go to seed, collecting them, sorting them out, storing them, labeling them. I've still got a container of pak choi seeds from like 2022. I don't really care what kind of Asian green it is, as long as it grows and feeds me. I just don't want to have to remember to plant it again. I think I struggle with the consistency that's required in gardening. Have you been able to tell? Things like Asian greens and carrots, they are pretty much taking care of themselves now, which is amazing. I've let them go to seed. I do collect a few just to make sure I've got some, but most of the time they're just dropping their own seed and they come up when they feel like it, which means I don't have to remember to plant them again. So my soil has become my seed bank, which when it's healthy soil and thriving means that I have to do a lot less work, and that is great. Permaculture food forests talk a lot about the principle of layers. Permaculture has layers. Onions have layers. Ogres have layers. Ooh, you both have layers. Anyway, so I decided to apply the concept of layering to the veggie garden as well, just on a smaller scale. So for instance, these capsicums and my chilies have gotten quite tall, but it allows me to have other stuff growing underneath them. Stuff that needs a bit more shade perhaps. It's working really well once the bigger plants get up and established. I can plant lettuces underneath them and they're protected from the hot summer sun. This is the benefit of saving space and also giving each plant what they need. This is when the companion planting comes in. So for instance, I've got tomatoes, and once they get up and established, I put the basil in underneath, putting a nitrogen fixer in every bed like beans and peas. So mixing the plants up together like this really helps when it comes to the pest control as well, because the pests find it harder to find your individual plants if they're all mixed up all over the garden. There's a multitude of different things growing in one spot. And also if like one bed gets a really hot summer sun patch and the other one doesn't, it's not like all of the crop that you've put in that one bed fails and you then have nothing of it. When it comes to reducing external inputs into the garden, one thing that is really working for me is chop and drop mulches, letting things like nasturtiums, warrigal greens and Queen Anne's lace get big and bushy and take over the space while I'm maybe not as focused on the garden, has really worked to create enough biomass to mulch the garden myself. So for instance, this area here was completely full and overgrown with Queen Anne's lace. When I got in here over the summer holidays and got really into the garden, I was able to chop and drop a lot of it and just mulch from within my own garden without having to buy and import stuff. It is the kind of thing that needs a bit of space to do. But it's also the kind of thing that has happened naturally because you're not always 100% focused on the garden. So having these plants that serve multiple functions and can also be used as a mulch is working very well for me. So the Queen Anne's lace attracts lady beetles. The nasturtium is edible and is also a beneficial insect attractant and a trap crop. Warrigal greens takes over very easily. This is what it does. Mulch, yay! And also it's edible. I eat that almost every day in my salads. Having these plants get established and self-seed means I really haven't had so many weed issues. The soil is building itself and covering itself with beneficial plants that have multiple uses rather than just weed plants that I have to pull out and throw away. Of course, you can't talk about a permaculture vegetable garden without mentioning perennials, the things that stay alive year after year. I've tried a few new ones this season. I've tried artichokes, which are delicious. This is when you should harvest them. If you don't harvest them now, they turn into this. So I can't eat these anymore, but they look gorgeous. They stink though, they do not smell good. Don't recommend sniffing them. Beautiful aesthetically. Ones I harvested and we ate earlier, they're already growing back and starting to produce new flowers. So that's a really great producer that's just gonna stay in the garden for a good long while, I hope. The other perennial I'm trialing this season is scarlet runner beans, a perennial bean. If I can not have to replant beans every year, I'll be very happy. So far, the bowerbirds are just decimating all of the beans I've got growing on the outside of the enclosure, which is a little bit sad. And sweet potato, growing sweet potato. Finally, we'll probably try asparagus next year. I'm working up to it. My family's gonna be like, yeah! But the other thing I've accidentally done is overwintered plants like this broccoli, which is looking very sad right now because we've just had like 4 40-degree days in a row. So it's a little crispy, but this has actually been one of my best producers this year. This and several other broccolis around. I just sort of snipped them off at ground level and they just started like sprouting again. I think they are a sprouting variety. So I gave them more food and they've just been creating all of these beautiful new heads of broccoli. So overwintering your plants is a great way of keeping the plants that you've already got alive and going without having to start from scratch every season. The fact that it's still here is amazing. I'm gonna keep it alive as long as I can. I also managed to accidentally overwinter a lot of my capsicums and chilies. That was a fluke. I let this nasturtium grow up and big and bushy around it. And I'm hoping that that created enough of a like microclimate in there because the capsicum was then protected from the cold of winter by having this biomass of another plant growing up and around it. And I think that might have been what protected them over the winter. I mean, we also maybe had a milder winter, so I'll be working on overwintering them more intentionally this year. Perennialize your plants as much as possible. Wicking beds, the one you've all been waiting to hear about. We've had these wicking beds now for about just over a year and a half. And it finally feels like they've come online. Yay! The wicking beds grow weeds now. And yes, that's a good thing. That means the soil is alive and it's made its own little ecosystem in there. It took us a while to build up some soil structure and soil life inside each individual garden bed wicking bed. There's a video on how we built these. Click the links that are around. While the wicking beds did need a lot of consistent work and inputs in the first few months, I'm hoping that it will sort of trail off now that they seem to be a little bit more established. In order to build up this life, I was making sure to leave the roots in there to decompose from the dead plants. I'd just chop them off at ground level, chopping and dropping whatever mulch, all of which has helped to build up that soil life. This year, the wicking beds are pumping along with all of the moisture-loving plants. It's been really, really helpful in the hot, dry summer days to know that my tomatoes are not going to split from inconsistent watering and they've always got enough to drink. I'm also using the layering principle here where I've got the tomatoes growing up and this cucumber is doing really, really well just growing down. I'm using all the vertical space available to us because of course having them raised like this we do have less vertical space, so utilizing the down trailing space has also been very helpful. I'm trialing a new variety of tomato this year. These are San Marzanos. They're a really funky shape and they seem to be producing like crazy. The other thing that's been really good about these is they seem to have a thicker skin, so they're more resistant to fruit fly. Apparently San Marzano tomatoes are the best ones for making tomato sauce out of, and that is what the majority of our tomatoes go towards doing, so I figured it would be worth using a dedicated sauce variety this year. Look at them all! Look at all this tomato sauce! This plant can hardly hold itself up. It's amazing. Needless to say, now that the soil health is here, I have much healthier plants. Last summer we had a lot of issues with blight. We do have a little bit of it this year. I am keeping on top of it, still doing the regular pruning and maintenance that you need to do with tomatoes because they're divas. They seem to be just dealing with it all a lot better. The other thing that's doing quite well in here is the eggplants. Again, they're another thing that need consistent moisture. Cucumbers, tomatoes, and eggplants do all get afflicted by the same viruses, so I shouldn't be planting them all so close together. Because I want them all because I've only got one bed. We are definitely planning on doing 2 more rows of these wicking beds now that we've recovered from making the first ones, and these seem to be really pumping along and working. So I guess what I've learnt in 6 years of gardening is to throw precision gardening out the window and embrace the natural cycles of the garden. I finally feel like I've got a working ecosystem in here. It's very satisfying and it works around my busy life. I can put a lot of effort in like I have over the summer holidays, and it looks amazing and it comes back to life, and I can also just let it go and it will take care of itself for a little while. It's a system that doesn't rely on perfect memory, perfect timing, or perfect amounts of energy. So if even one of these methods strikes your fancy as something that might help you to reduce your garden overwhelm, then this video has done its job. Honestly, if you're trying to grow food without burning out, take what works and just discard the rest. Are there any permaculture methods that you use in your veggie garden that I didn't mention? Let me know in the comments. I'm always looking for new ideas and ways to optimize this system. I hope you enjoyed seeing a little bit of my garden in summer. Like, comment, share, subscribe, all the things. I'm still bad at outros. Gah!